this podcast is made possible by the generosity of listeners like you. Kindly consider a contribution through Patreon or PayPal. Links are in the details box. Patreon is a monthly subscription that you can cancel anytime, and PayPal is a one-time donation. Any amount is appreciated. And follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, the handle, the Beirut Banyan. And you can find us on our YouTube channel with the same name, and you can start watching the episodes as they're released. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. I'm Ronnie Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan. Life is unstable. Things have been extremely unstable the last few months. And what's the definition of a first world problem? It's when there's a few weeks that go by and you haven't released an episode. So I get anxious. Yeah, I get anxious. Like either you're hibernating, or you've, you turned into Batman. I see you wearing a Bruce Wayne Batman shirt, right? There you go. Yeah?
Yep.
There you go. Or you've gone crazy. Or maybe you're just waiting for like a flood of episodes to be released. But then I realized quickly, it's like, oh, no. You have other things to do. And you have priorities, I'm assuming. And one of them is your online teaching. And I want to get into that today. The other thing is, I should say Mabruk publicly for your book. And we're going to get into this book today. It's Sardonically Speaking.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. I wish that was the subtitle, actually. Hell yeah.
The subtitle was Why So Serious? But then I changed it.
Oh, I think that would have been actually quite entertaining as well. But you went with what Socrates, stand-up comedians, and rappers have in common. And maybe that's even more entertaining. I'll also note from the beginning, you're very generous. You mentioned something right before we started recording. You mentioned that there's a discount for fans of this podcast, that there will be a link attached to this episode for a 40% discount on your book. Yeah. And the promotion code is just Beirut Banyan. Did I get that right? Okay, excellent.
Yes, I mean, but if they just click at the link that you will be posting, then the discount will automatically show up.
You make life easy. You cut red tape. You remove...
not myself. It's Gumroad.
Oh, I see.
You have this option, so it's actually thank you, Gumroad, for making this easy for us.
Makes more sense.
Yeah.
I also like that we both dressed up with very colorful clothing today. We're both sort of happy and bright and all of the above. I mean, could you find two more depressing?
Yeah. The thing is, I have this philosophy shirt which I made myself, but I couldn't find it because we just recently moved out to a new place and everything is just a mess and we still haven't unpacked. So the shirt says something along the lines of, I'm a philosopher, I ask questions for a living, got some change. So, yeah. Do you have some change? Spare some change, basically. Yeah.
Well, I guess I should say, Mabruk, then that you've also moved into a new apartment. I mean, I noticed that the background color is also equally uplifting.
I don't have bookshelves or books or a library or anything of the sort. So, but this is hopefully this is a temporary kind of place because we are scheduled to be leaving out soon. But it all depends on when the Canadians decide to lift the travel restrictions.
Right.
So,
well,
we don't even know how long this will extend for.
I'm glad you mentioned this. I was actually hesitating on asking whether or not we could sort of get into your inevitable departure. So, I for many reasons, and I know it was maybe just 2 or 3 months ago, we recorded together Could be longer, actually. I'm losing track of time. But it wasn't that long ago.
July. It was mid-July, more or less, yeah.
A lot has happened since mid-July. I actually don't know. When you were recording before, where were you, Beirut? Which part of the city?
Near the central bank, basically. So we were around 2 kilometers radius from where the blast happened.
Spears, this sort of area?
Yes.
Awal Hamra,
yep. Yeah, exactly that.
And Sanaa, was your apartment, I mean, I know it's, relatively speaking, it was a safer part of the city to be in, but is that why you moved out, or it's unrelated to?
No, it's unrelated. It's just, well, two things. First off, we were lucky enough to not have the ACs on August 4th. Yeah, I had recently gotten back home. I was out finishing paperwork and doing a few things. Had we had the ACs on, all the glass would have shattered.
Because the AC, so in other words, your windows were all open already.
Yeah, this is the thing. So the ACs were not on, so everything was open, and luckily the blast so we only had a few glasses shatter, but then the apartment next to us was almost, it was everything shattered. The glasses, the drawers, but luckily no one lives there. But it's because it was closed, they were affected more than we did. So yeah, that's one. But then we moved out because we were scheduled to be leaving, or we thought we would be leaving sometime soon. But then, we don't know till when they will keep the travel restrictions in effect. And it felt like we were living in a limbo kind of thing. Should we leave the apartment now? Should we clean it? We have things there because we're renting the apartment. So ultimately, you feel like you're just hovering in limbo, basically.
I'm not happy. This is very selfish. So I'm glad I can say things to you this way, and it doesn't really have an impact on you. I'm glad. From a selfish perspective, I'm not happy that you're leaving Lebanon. And I know that your response will be, that's selfish of me to say that because it's your well-being, not mine. So I'm already ahead of you in that sort of, yes, I know that that's, from my narrow perspective, very, very immediate. That most friends that I know, not from the podcast, from life, from childhood, from whatever, university, from social life, for the most part are gone. There's a handful of people I know that are, or if they're able to, they've left. Very few that are able to did not leave, and then the rest are on their way out. So it's you're one of the few people that I've met the last year, really, since I started doing this podcast last summer, that I would have liked to get to know in Lebanon, maybe in a couple of months, if I'm stateside and you're in Canada by then. It's true, you're physically in Canada, but for me, again, selfish, I would rather meet you in Lebanon. This doesn't go just to you, by the way. It's most people I know most people that I've been fortunate to meet virtually the last few months that are letting go of the country. And at the same time, I'll push a little here. You've had exchanges, you've had battles online where you make this a point. It's like, stop telling us, meaning someone like you, what we should do. Writing it out, and stop feeling sorry for us without having skin in the game. And I know these are Twitter tantrums, so maybe they're not this is not an academic, and rightfully so, you don't want it to be an academic view. I get that even from your book, that's deliberately not academic. But at the same time, there is a need to have some people that are willing to push boundaries and exchange healthy thoughts, or even maybe battle out ideas in Lebanon. I did an episode, and I'm releasing it very soon, where the guest is adamant that without freedom in the loosest definition, without expression, real expression, Lebanon is meaningless. And I got from that speech in all variety. This is a severe consequence to the country when people that are willing to talk stop talking there. They talk from abroad. And I think I'm a consequence of this too. I'm doing this for the last few months. I've been doing it from New York, not from Beirut. Anyway, that's a lot to sort of start with. But let me actually find the introduction here to this episode. 20 minutes in, I have an introduction for you. I want to ask you the hardest question first, and it's probably the most entertaining. Why are you so pissed off? There are reasons why you're frustrated with certain things in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And I know that you have legitimate reasons to be upset with the situation in Lebanon, for sure. But I say this in a playful way, not in a condescending or mocking way.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah.
You're irritable. And
I am.
And I ask this politely, if there's a way to do it, because I think comedians or jesters, by default, are the most irritable people. They are very sensitive. And the sensitivity is where the magic happens. The best comedy, the best, the best comedy, maybe even the best art forms come from that extreme sensitivity. And you chose comedians and rappers as your guides. I don't know a philosopher. I don't know any philosopher that is willing to put Eminem against Daniel Dennett. Or for that matter, familiar names, maybe not. A comedian turned podcaster like Joe Rogan, who you mentioned in your book, Nikki Glaser, or whoever, any comedian. And then you're looking to them for guidance, Amy Schumer. And you're saying that, they're the most irritable comedians, and they're very good at their job. And satire is where you are, not necessarily the love of wisdom. And I'm being hard here because I want to get to the real core of the issue. This book is born.
But that's exactly what I'm arguing for.
So if you can maybe steer this a bit for me.
But first off, we have to clarify a few things a bit. When it comes to me being irritable, with regards to what? Well, I'm clarifying this because, like you mentioned, something about Lebanon and freedom of speech, to be able to say what you have in mind. And my take on this would be different. So this is why.
I'll use the
clarify a bit. With regards, I'm irritable, yes, of course, but with regards to what particularly? So I can know how to...
It's the narrow lens I have, very narrow, which is the last pages of your book, which are the tweets that I know. You're exposing you're exposing what pisses you off online regularly.
Yeah.
And you also you call out individuals. You make it, in a way, you make it personal, but you also make it playful.
Yeah.
And it could be something that is maybe not even intended, but you hone in on something, one thing, that you're able to dissect to its core. And look, I'll say it. There's been many exchanges with people I've interviewed on the podcast, and you kind of call them out on something that I don't think they're even aware of. And then it becomes a tit for tat. And I don't want to say provocateur, because I think that has a condescending angle to it. I don't know if it's really that. I don't think you're not a shock jock. You're not just trying to instigate. But I think you're willing to share what makes you upset, and it's very it's like what makes you upset. It's not what makes us upset, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
It's really at the end of the day, it's mostly Twitter. But that's really how I know you.
Yeah, of course, because that's where I'm almost most of the time. So, but yeah, I'm irritable when it comes to. I have to. This is why I wanted to clarify, because for me, I don't think politically I'm not involved. So what makes me irritable are other things. So this is why I don't mind to say what's on my mind, basically, because I don't get into all this political fuss, and I don't care politically. I really genuinely don't care about anything that's happening in Lebanon, and this is why I approach things from a philosophical vantage point or a philosophical perspective. Now, yeah, the thing is, I'm not really irritable. It's just fun to do on Twitter.
Eminem,
like
Eminem.
This is
Eminem's lyrics.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you here. I'm taking liberty here doing this. You quote passages from Eminem, his lyrics that go back to this is maybe 20 years ago. This is his sort of when he was first becoming popular, and I mean it's ranting. I mean Eminem he's very good at it. He's very talented at the word usage. He's a wordsmith at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it's just ranting. I mean, the guy is very thin-skinned. He's always pissed off, and he's fantastic. He's fantastic. You know, and the reason I mentioned comedians at the beginning is because I tend to think of them that they're the purest joke is born out of those sort of sensitivities.
Exactly.
Yeah. But do you see yourself in that light as well? I know it's not the same career. I know that.
I hope so. Like, I wouldn't mind that at all, because I think that there's like, this is ultimately what you have to, or what I think really matters. It's just those who, whether or not because they're thin-skinned, they just say what's on their mind. Like this is what I like about them. Like, thin-skinned or not, maybe because they are thin-skinned, they can just go there and tell people what they really think, and they get themselves in trouble. But then they say it as is. And because they say it as is, whether or not you agree with it, there's maybe something to it. They may have a point one way or the other.
Are you sort of linking being blunt to also maybe what the role of someone like you should be, which is no filter?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see that as part of your...
Yes.
Okay.
And you know why? Because I'm like, you might be, or I might be irritable, but I don't take things personally. So, for example, this is what I like, even in my classes back in the day, or even now online. It's, if students have a problem with me and they want to say it out loud, I don't care. It's like, this is what makes it fun, because I'd rather that you just like say what's on your mind, like what's bothering you, and let's talk it out, instead of creating layers of complexities such that everyone starts to decipher things and read into things. It's like, just say what's on your mind, like what's bothering you. Let's talk about it.
Let me ask you.
And this is, I think, is a much better approach.
I'm starting off with a premise, and I want to sort of see if it's true or not. And I like quoting people to people, so I have passages here that I want to quote you to.
Thank you first off for buying a copy and for reading the book.
That's my pleasure. I'm going to make it a point here, and this is no way condescending. It is short, so this can be read if you want to in a few hours. It glides by. On your iPhone, it says a few hundred pages, but it's not a few hundred pages. It may be less than 100 A4. I don't know what the... I don't know what...
20,000 words.
20,000 words. Okay, so yeah, so it's
like a master's thesis or something.
Exactly. So it's leisurely reading too, and it's all the people that I know. So it's not, you're not forcing anything down someone's throat. It's actually very easy and very digestible. There's a quote though. I think, and this is you speaking, I think stand-up comedians and rappers are more contemporary philosophers than academic philosophy professors. And in the background, I know this because you mentioned in the book, you're public about it, you left your academic career to pursue something far more independent, risky, daring, maybe. These types of entertainers, comedians or rappers, Are they doing something similar in your mind? Meaning that it's all about them. The most vulnerable profession I can think of, and I may have even, I hope I'm not borrowing this from somebody because I stumbled upon recently. I'm sure it's attributed to somebody that it's the most vulnerable profession. That it's just yourself. It's actually not far away from what we're doing. It's your voice. The difference is there's an audience testing you and making sure you're funny. And if they're not satisfied with your content, they're not going to laugh and you will not succeed. But it's a very leveled playing field. It's you and your audience. So it's an exposed profession. Rappers, I mean, I think at least in the beginning, I don't know what it's like now. I'm getting older. I'm turning 40 next year. So I have no authority on the rap industry. But I remember a time when rap music was daring. It was risky. Yeah. It was risky financially. It's maybe in my adolescence that you could make millions of dollars selling a rap CD, rap record. I mean, Dr. Dre is early 90s. Before that, there's movies made about this. People like the groups like NWA that couldn't make it big, and then they sort of were forced into this record industry world. But there was at least a decade where rap artists were literally on their own, pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
And they're individuals, and they have an audience. And if they're good with words, if they're good with rhymes, they make it. But it's hard. Are you in that camp? And I'm not saying you're Snoop Dogg. I'm not saying you're whatever, any famous comedian now. Jim Jeffries you cite as well, and Nikki Glaser and all these people. But are you relating to them in that way? That is vulnerable, exposed, but also risk-taking and saying, in a sense, F you to the standard. I can do this my way.
Yeah, kind of. Or at least I hope I can do that one way or the other. So yeah. So challenging the system a bit, and this is where the idea of the book came from. Like I really don't know whether I'm there, because it's going to be like it's a process, it's a journey. But the premise of the book is that real philosophy, between brackets, is questioning and challenging the system, questioning the upheld beliefs, the values, the traditions. And this is what the pre-Socratics were doing. This is what Socrates was doing, and this is what people like Schopenhauer were doing, and those I cite like Paul Feyerabend and these. And my take on this was that you look at academics nowadays, and very rarely would you see someone saying things as are, because this is what Schopenhauer criticized, and people like Hegel, they are rent seekers, he called them. This is so why? Because they are funded by the government, and if you're funded by the government, then automatically you're shackled and you're conditioned by whatever the government tells you, or they're overlooking your work, and they're etc. So nowadays you have also peer reviews, etc. Long story short, you look at, and this is why I cited two examples I'm familiar with, you look at rappers and you look at stand-up comedians, and they don't give a shit about what the norms say, so they question them and they create a space for discussion, whether or not we like it. Right? So it's not that they're irritable. Of course, it's very vulnerable because they need to be funny or they need to be good at what they do. But instead of, or in addition, we can talk about this later, that part, like peer review. But in addition to this, they really create a space. They touch on the important topics. Like a rapper doesn't only juggle rhymes. They also have content there. And stand-up comedians as well. Like, of course, they need to be funny, but then if you look at what they're doing, there's more to it than just them being funny. kind of. And this is why I saw in them modern day philosophers in the marketplace.
And the marketplace here is really the antithesis of the faculty.
Yes.
Okay. I want to get into this because you mentioned this several times in the book, and you sort of, I think you're upset at your own sort of experience, and I want to touch on this, again, quoting you. Everything I am writing about is the result of personal observation. It would not hurt to remind you that while I am trying to stress the importance of not taking oneself all too seriously, I'm not interested in mounting a rigorous argument.
Yeah.
You mentioned very specific cases where you're the runner-up twice for full-time professor, and you don't make it.
Yeah.
And you don't make it for the reasons you mentioned, have to do more with just faculty politics. Politics, and then you put the Lebanese context in there, and it becomes very personal and very emotional and very silly. And I think I don't know if you say brown nosing, but you do say sort of kissing up or sucking up to you have to suck up to people to make it. But that said, and this is all sort of obvious, and maybe AUB and LAU are famous for that too. But I can only think of rigorous argument as being, that's the backbone to any pursuit, any academic. The rigorous argument is part of philosophy too. It's not opposed to the endeavor itself. I would like to think that rigorous argument plays a fundamental role. And here I hear you saying here that it's enough of that. Enough of that. It's time maybe to look into areas that are more important. And that is what you define as the marketplace. Not just you, of course. There's many people that sort of have gone that route.
Of course.
Yeah, but why is it so bad to have the rigorous argument as maybe equally important?
We would get into a different kind of discussion when it comes to rigorous argumentation here. It's like what would we define as rigorous argument? Here we would be doing kind of philosophy, right? It's like, this is exactly my point. It's what we think is rigorous argument is ultimately could be, I can argue rigorously that it's arbitrary. The premises that like if I'm going to be giving you an argument based on premises and the conclusion, too analytic, it makes sense, it's very solid, etc. If my premises are false, the argument is false. So what point does it matter if I give you a very rigorous argument, but the content is wrong or false?
I think it's more, in my eyes, more like theory and practice. A musicologist will have to study music in ways that are outdated, and will have to explore theories that are no longer, or maybe they don't play a fundamental role today. And a musicologist could also be a rapper, or whatever. They could make their own individual music and be more successful. And maybe their talent is in that pursuit. But at the same time, the theory behind it, the structure, I mean, what else is a university for at the end of the day? I don't think of any skill I acquired in the university setting that I use right now in my financial situation, if that makes any sense. My marketplace endeavor and my university background don't line up. But being able to maybe see as wide of a prism as possible, and being able to have the background to know at least where the ideas are coming from or how they're formulated, I owe that to university. I think that is, I think so. I think so. Not to the experience of teaching or academia and the faculty as a student.
As a student.
Yeah.
This is that's like also that's part of it's interesting that you brought this up, because this is also another thing that I was thinking about. Like nowadays, I personally question the point of the university, tertiary education, if you want. It's like, what's the point? Because so this is what I'm seeing nowadays, and this is where the irritability comes from. And by the way, someone I know a few days ago, no, but I'm saying this because I was talking to someone a few days ago, and he was like, yes, the book is interesting, but then it's like, enough with the hate on academia, kind of.
To a degree, I share the same sentiment. That there is a misgiving that I sense is more personal on your side, but I'm not challenging on that front. I'm saying there's
forget my experience as a professor. Like this is the personal aside. It's like I have come to realize, but this is my point. Like let's distinguish between two things. My experience as a professor, like with full-time, etc., and my experience as a professor, just as an external observer at how things are being done.
Right. So within the system, but not. Yeah.
So take that personal part out. You look at the politics, at the curriculum, etc., and where things are heading. And I think the problem, this is why I started thinking about the need for people to shake the system. And this is basically what the French philosophers were doing at the turn of the century, or later on, like mid-50s. They were trying to stir up the system, but then they became part of the system as well. So nowadays, like you're talking about freedom of expression, for example, and you look at how things are done in liberal arts classes, and I don't see freedom of expression anymore. I see preaching. So bit by bit, without people noticing, everything is becoming all too, on the one hand, static, and it's become just pre-packaged. This is how the students should think, not the students should learn how to think. So now you're giving them not the tools, but you're giving them how or what they need to think, kind of speak. So even in philosophy.
So I mean, even in the one department that should be immune to all this, really?
Yes. And I can examples in classes on and off campus, and in discussions with other people. It's like if you so much as dare bring or explore a topic or an issue from a different perspective, you're automatically labeled.
What does the alternative perspective mean in that sense? Because it can't be like debating Socrates, and it can't be
free healthcare or not.
Really?
Libertarian. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and instead of having a serious discussion about it to figure out what the problem is, or explore these issues further and in depth and think about them. Some people would just automatically discard the possibility of thinking about topics like that from a libertarian perspective, like let's think about healthcare as a commodity. They cannot even entertain that, So we're not telling them this is how you should think or not. They're not even open to the possibility of thinking about this as a possible argument. So, and I'm giving you just like one simple example because I don't want to get into other issues. Like this is
no, but that's a relatively safe topic. So, okay, I'm gonna again quote you because I think this lines up with the issue of dogmatism. And you say when you become dogmatic about your stances. And I'm assuming here you're referring specifically to a philosophy professor or anybody that's sort of stuck in their views. Anyone.
It could be someone religious as well.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter. Or someone who's into politics as well. You can be dogmatic about political. Yeah.
So when the ideas stagnate and one sort of when you become dogmatic about your stances and you start having ego problems, you turn into a typical philosophy professor.
Yeah.
You'd be able to get away with things, and your arguments could go unchecked. Typical philosophy professor is somebody with an ego and dogmatic about their views. See, and I ask you this because my fondest course is from the late 1990s, undergraduate course. I got bumped into an advanced philosophy class. And I sort of did that because the introduction course, the professor was so good, he allowed several students to merge the introduction with the advanced and have like a 6-credit course where you're really taking 2 courses at once. I think I wish I could find these. I have no idea where they are. And I'm 18, I'm a kid, but I'm being pushed to think and really think about things that I have no knowledge on, and it's a crash course. And I never once experienced, and this is my own case, I never once experienced a dogmatic view. All I experienced was somebody challenging our thoughts and making us challenge ourselves. And that's the impression I got from philosophy and a philosophy course. Is that something that just is gone altogether, or is it something that's bigger than that? It's permutating all things. Because you mentioned politics, polarization. You also mentioned religion. Is it a consequence of something else, or is it really just academia and philosophy don't go well together?
No, it might have been different before, because even my experience of philosophy was different at university. So,
okay.
The courses I took were really also challenging, and it pushed us, and it got us to think about things. Also, it did not give us a formula. It just taught us. It just raised questions, and it didn't give us any answers.
Yeah, exactly.
So
this is true.
This is very important for philosophy. But of course, and this is why I said I'm going to be generalizing a lot, because this is based on my experience, of course. So if I always come across people who teach at community colleges in the USA, in the US, and they don't have that problem.
So that their jobs are less at risk?
Less at risk, exactly. So whereas if you want to maintain, I'm trying to diagnose the problem here, maybe, but what you could see 20 years ago is no more the case, because nowadays, for example, if you want to have, because there are in certain places there are low enrollment in philosophy courses, say. And in order to incentivize students to take philosophy courses, they get scholarships and funding. So, for example, the funding would, one of the conditions of the funding is that it should be channeled to a course that tackles these issues.
These issues, meaning like?
Well, I'm particular issues.
Okay, right.
But it's because we would get into a problem ourselves. But so they state one of their conditions is that you have to have a course on this particular topic, and by this particular topic, it's not Aristotle. Sometimes they do have that, but then nowadays it's becoming more politicized and political, and so students now take these courses because they are paid for. And so you can see where between brackets, like there's some sort of agenda that is being,
So the pursuit is money. Is it something like that, where you're not studying philosophy, or even if you are studying philosophy, you're not even given access to what a philosophy degree really should be, that it's constrained. And it could be constrained for reasons that are financial, meaning that you don't want to get a lawsuit. Could be that the scholarship has restrictions within it. to not teach certain things, or maybe the department,
or to teach certain things,
or exactly, to focus on certain things and ignore certain things, and that in the middle, in the cracks, are the risk takers that find themselves sort of kicked out.
Yes and no. Like I can say I'm just plain stupid because I get myself fired from all positions I get. Like I don't mind saying that. But in this one particularly, and I already mentioned that before. It's that I got or the fallout was because as I already explained before, students were complaining that I was scaring them. So it wasn't a disagreement over what I should be teaching, or what kind of technology I should be using, active learning techniques, etc. It was simply about whether I wanted them to study or not.
So you're scaring them with the choice of topic, or scaring them? No.
By telling them if you don't study, you will fail this course.
Oh, but that's my whole university experience. I mean, why is that scary today?
Yeah. Because it's not why is that scary today. It's why are universities scared of such a thing? Low enrollment, so they need to maintain their clients, because now they talk about students as clients. So it's become a business model.
So the students felt that you were being too hard on them.
Yeah.
And that's where the issue, that's what it is at the core, is that you wanted to teach a certain way that made sense to you. It's probably how you were taught. I mean, it's
not even that. It's just it's something I do at the beginning of the course to just scare away those who don't want to.
With your permission, since you're not teaching at these institutions and you've gone rogue and you teach your own online, can you share can you be like a little? Can you share an anecdote, maybe an example, how you would? Because I don't think this is like scary as in horror movie scary. I think it's more like get your shit together.
So the problem is the following, and I already discussed that several times. Like so. It might explain where everything is, or what the problem is. So, for example, and they have this problem now because it's online. So before that, usually a philosophy class that has more than at most 25 students is very difficult to teach. Yeah. So even now, I'm doing things myself, and I cap it at 20 students. Like I'm teaching online, and it's scalable, and I cap it at 20 students, and sometimes I would open capacity for those who are interested, but then because I know they're interested, and so it's the dynamics of the discussion is going to be not as difficult as 40 students in class, right?
Right.
So in certain institutions, the capacity is 40 students. And if you show up to class and you have 40 students who are taking the course because they have to, your experience, you don't really have enough choice to engage in a discussion, or really, because a philosophy course is a heavily discussion-oriented class. Of
course, yeah.
And
so these were
students in class is a lot.
These are undergraduate courses, right? Not.
Undergrad.
Yeah.
So this is why I adopted this strategy whereby during add and drop, I would try to lower the numbers of students in my class. But then afterwards, it's because I would have like 25 students in class. That would be ideal. So the classes would become automatically more interesting.
Right.
It's 40. It's like now with online teaching, they have 50 students in class.
So now because of COVID, they upped it up. They upped it to 50.
Yes. So it's like, what kind of philosophy are you teaching in a 50 students class?
But is this a personal thing for you, or is this a standard sort of experience teaching?
No, it's a standard.
So philosophy. I'm glad you bring this up. that philosophy course I took, I think, was maybe 20 students only.
Yeah.
It couldn't be an auditorium class.
No.
Because you need to engage your students. It's not a course you just have PowerPoint slides about Hegel or whatever.
It's not a biology course.
It's not. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So you need to discuss. You need to see what they think. You need to expose them to other views. You need to have a discussion and steer it in a way such that you would show them the different views, different arguments, explain them, get them to ask questions. So it's in a 50 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes course. This doesn't work. My courses now, even though it's just one month course, I teach twice a week, 2 hours each session.
Right, and then at a university level, it would be probably 45 minutes or something, right?
45 minutes, yeah. So you barely have enough time to ask a question.
So this actually is taking me to the other issue I wanted to bring up with you, which is, well, there's two very big things I want to discuss. And the first is what it's like to do this on your own. It sounds so seductive. You're able to choose just the number you want. I'm going to guess you can choose not just the length, but the time that best suits you. The location, as long as you have Wi-Fi, anywhere. You could go to Greenland and teach your course.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you could do this from Canada. You can do this from anywhere, and Wi-Fi becomes maybe is that why you're leaving? Because you can't teach it.
I need Wi-Fi and electricity. That's all I need.
It's true. These are actually But it's for the most part, you're your own editor. I mean, nobody's telling you how to do it. You have to tell yourself. And and within that, I think I am my harshest critic. When people compliment me, I have a filter where I don't hear it. I just don't hear it. What I do hear, though, it's 1 out of maybe 100 comments, or even less, maybe. Could be 1 out of hundreds. They're slightly negative, maybe, and I obsess over it. And then I obsess not because they're being too hard on me. I'm obsessing meaning like, oh yeah. And that's nothing compared to what I think about myself. I'm much harder on myself than you're on me. But going rogue and teaching a course online, is it really just perfect for a personality like your own? Meaning that you don't have tolerance for the
contrary.
You don't have tolerance for the concerns of an institution. You're not willing. Yes. You're not willing to play by rules that were set.
Yeah.
And that
that were set. That I see as either unnecessary or unfair.
Unfair.
Or for unnecessary, like maybe unfair is a big word here. Like I can go on and on, but sometimes you really like, for example, let's take a different example that has nothing to do with academia, a 9-to-5 job, for example. Yeah. It's like, and I see this in Lebanon constantly, and I tweeted about this the other day. It's like, if Corona or COVID has taught us one thing, is that you don't really, sometimes or more often than not, you don't really have to be in an office. Yeah. So why the hell do some employers insist on having people go to the office? So this for me, and I am not like, this doesn't concern me. But I look at it and I'm like seriously, if they're doing their job, why do you have to be too controlling or too obsessive over whether this person is in the office or is somewhere else? Insofar as, of course, their job allows them or permits them to do that, like it will not affect their productivity, or the nature of the job is such that you don't have to be located geographically in one place. Like, why not do it? So this is what I think as or unnecessary, or for example.
Right. But then there's that social benefit where if you don't go to an office, I don't myself, but I know that there's a consequence here, which is you have to have very high social stamina and extroverted tendency to have friends, to go and meet people. In other words, I think the average employee, their whole life revolves around the destination. So a 9 to 5 job, I think anyone now, I think most professions, COVID, like you said, it's just that example that everyone has in front of them. They can work from home, but very few people want to keep doing this. Very few. I think there's a real deep desire to socialize again. I think that's really where the benefit is. It's not, and of course there's structural advantage of having one location to solve all problems. It could just be it could be just something very simple, that there's one location for everything. But there's also the social benefit, the social aspect. And the reason I bring this up from now is because I was wondering if you're finding this to be a lonelier journey. More professionally rewarding, maybe, but socially distant. And maybe, I mean, I yearn for the time that I can do an episode in person again. I really miss that.
Yeah, I see.
I really miss the human experience.
So 2 things. First off, when it comes to my courses, because you were asking about that, I actually wrote or published an article just today, so that you see where it's coming from, and I'll quote.
Quote yourself to yourself.
To you, because I don't remember the exact phrasing, because this is exactly what you mentioned about obsessing not over the praise that you get, but over the criticism that you get. So you start getting honest feedback, which I think is a much better indicator of how to refine and improve the quality of your content. You learn more about yourself and your audience by listening to what they have to say. An experience of this sort is much more important, I have come to realize, than, say, feedback you get at a company you worked for. In the digital marketplace, you directly get feedback from those who are interested in your work. Mostly, the criticism and suggestions you receive are more genuine. Instead of being evaluated by certain standards that are universal and need to be applied across an institution, and where sometimes they are just arbitrary, in the marketplace, you really are evaluated for the content that you put forward or that you offer. And so people who take my classes and they write a feedback afterwards, I take it more seriously. Why? Because they genuinely are interested in the content I'm offering, or they're interested in philosophy. And so instead of getting like a student review that is based on the grade or how well they performed in the course, or being evaluated by, let's say, the dean or the chairperson, here you're getting evaluated directly or in a more honest manner. No one is like, they can say it straight to your face and they couldn't care less. They're like, yeah, I would rather that you do this way, or that you might include this. Right? And so it's an interest. Yeah.
Is there anything that made you better, made your work better as a result of peer review, where faculty? No, nothing.
No.
Okay,
nothing.
So because that's the gold standard, right? Yeah. I mean, you get your journals or your articles are published among colleagues, not among your students, right? So students don't really have a say in that. But here you've lost that, the upper sort of. There's no disadvantage for you in losing that.
It's in fact it has more advantages because seriously, the feedback you get is very, very interesting. Sometimes the criticism that you get is insightful and it's honest, and I appreciate that. And we go back to the same issue we discussed at the beginning. It's like it has nothing to do with what you do. So, for example, I can be more honest with them, and I can tell someone to fuck off if I don't want them in my course, and I make sure to say it. I don't really mind, and I did that once. Ironically enough, the person kept attending.
After you said that?
Yes, like I did not say fuck off as such, but I snapped because they weren't able to entertain a different argument or to look at things differently. So I snapped post class, and everyone was, but some people were there. Like I did not do it in private, but anyway, like we had an exchange, but it was again an honest exchange. So it wasn't personal. It wasn't there. There is no this baggage whereby I have to play politics with you because I need the promotion later on, or because I need you to have my back when I present this or that, or when I apply for a grant. So it's much more direct kind of. So until now, of course, this is something you mentioned with when it comes to stand-up comedians. It's like they have direct feedback, kind of. So if they're not funny, they would know that.
Absolutely. But I'm going to play devil's advocate because I'm going to mention somebody that you mentioned in the book and somebody that we both watch, I think, regularly, who's Joe Rogan. His whole career is sort of born out of the Comedy Store in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And you have the owner who vets the comedians and does not sort of, there's a hazing process. And you're not allowed to have a headlining set until the peers, the owner and the peers, for the most part, agree that you've got what it takes. That's the antithesis. That's the complete opposite of an Instagram influencer sharing their comedy. They may be very funny. They could be hilarious and extremely talented, but they don't have there's no promotion. There's no sort of, there's no chain of command. And if you go back a generation earlier, stand-up comedians, the only way they could be known was by showing up on a TV show late at night. It's a night show in America. And if they did well, they had a career. If they bombed, you'd never hear from them again. So there's this like pressure to do well. A lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety. And those that have what it takes, for the most part, are names that we know now. This time around, there's no pressure. You are the owner. You're your own peer. It's your mind at work. There has to be a disadvantage there, where the class is telling you, the students are telling you what they like and don't like, but you don't have anything to sort of tell you need to do better. And at the end of the day, they're students. They're there to hear. Sorry. Yeah.
No, but and it's an interesting point. But first off, like they're not undergrads. The participants in my courses nowadays come from all walks of life and from all age groups.
Right.
I have managing partners in firms, and I have people who actually are either graduates or undergrads, and I have people who are retired, people who just are interested in philosophy because people who are,
Right.
And I have people based in Europe and business people and in California and Texas and Beirut. It's so you're exposed to a wider audience base. This is first. Like these people know what they want, if you want. So the more you get exposed to their experiences, to their interests, etc., it automatically you get signals so that you would improve here or tackle this issue here or what to do better in certain or what topics to cover or how to do it, how to make it more accessible, etc. So this is on the one hand, but when it comes to the chain of command, it's
or the structure, the pyramid, where you know what you need to do to get there. Without that pyramid, it's kind of it's flattening everything. It's almost like everything is up for grabs, and yet there's nothing really to grab to. There's no direction per se. Yeah. There's nothing. I mean, I'm in this world too, so I'm wondering myself at times whether or not there's any intimidation here or disadvantage.
the way I see it now, I think it's much better. So there's this like I haven't finished the book. I'm reading this book by Ricardo Semler about his how he revamped his company Semco in Brazil. Um, uh, they sold equipments and like parts, submarine parts or things like or pipes, etc. And but the point is, the first thing he did when he got into office, he took over his dad's company. He was like, "I'm going to be doing things differently." And what he does is he just this is where I got to now. He automatically fires all those in the management, the board of directors, if you want, or the board of trustees, or and he's like, yeah, we don't need you anymore. So he cuts down. He fires all these unnecessary positions. They didn't have a secretary. They didn't have office boys. They didn't have anything of the sort. and and instead of creating more hierarchy, what he did is he flattened things at the company. So of course you had a leader or you had a manager of a certain department, but the employees evaluated their manager and not vice versa. So if they weren't happy with their manager, the manager gets fired.
Right.
So it was a bottom-up kind of approach.
Bottom-up, right.
And they did not really have any set schedule. You could come in or you could clock in anytime you wanted. And they left it up for the employees to decide who's going to come when. And they had open books, their accounts and their finances, and the employees chose their salaries. So you could look at, so everything was transparent. Yeah, and I know this might not be quite related to what you're saying, but the chain of command was not really there. And the CEO, he says, I was there just to be to act as a catalyst. I just put things out there and everything. I didn't need to be there. He says, I took 2 months vacations. Sometimes I came back. My office was relocated to a smaller place, and I was happy because insofar as everything is working, I don't really mind. And so I would want to ask you, isn't this better? Like maybe the stress that we add with this chain of command and you reporting and wanting that promotion or having the illusion that now you're at a you're climbing up the ladder of whatever it is, and now you have promotion from assistant to associate or from whatever, associate to senior to manager, blah blah blah. Is this how things should be? Because you would be, instead of focusing on your job now, you're focusing more on climbing the hierarchy ladder. You want to become a manager or a dean or you're constantly aspiring for more, such that you really forget about and you add stress. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud.
Okay, so I'll link it to your book, and I'll link it also to another question I wanted to ask you, and I'll start with my own sort of take on this. I mean, for the most part, I'm in a similar situation. For the most part, I am now doing a trial run with an outlet that requires some. There's levels. I have to work with somebody who will edit what I have to say, and that person has a superior that will have to green light it. And it may not be what I want to express. It may end up being another idea. In total, it may actually be not even what I wanted to start with. But, and this is a very recent thing that I've been doing, it reminded me that I've been very narrow. And I've been very narrow and very good at a few things. And I've gotten really good at a few things. But I may not be as good as I used to be in other things. And that, I think, it has opened my mind back to the way it used to open in that philosophy course. and it also opened it in a way that I used to have to deal with, whether that's a 9-to-5 job that I want there was a time in my life that I was not doing these things, that I had desk jobs, I had office work. May not be the most exciting. It's rarely very exciting, but it definitely made me realize that I just narrowed the prism. So I'm less comfortable today as a result of exploring things that I may have been more comfortable doing years ago, as a result of going solo, doing things on my own. And it's a very recent feeling, and I may not even survive the trial run. I mean, it's a fresh thing, but it's made me work very hard. So I know that I'm pushing myself also in an uncomfortable way. Probably the way I used to push myself when there was a supervisor or whatever. Somebody overseeing my work and telling me, it is kind of like a supervisor, actually. It's somebody telling you this is not good enough. And I'm sure it's good enough, but it's not good enough. Yeah, I'll add one more thing, and then we can sort of.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
This is the reason why I haven't self-published. I have something that's approaching 80,000 words. It should be a little longer at the end. Yeah. And I haven't self-published, even though I thought it was done several times. I look back on it, and then I know that if I self-publish, there will be people buying it. I'm sure about this. People will buy it. But I'll never know. I'll never know if it was up to the standard. The standard not set by me. It's not my standard, right? Yeah. But I'll never know if it's the standard that everyone else went through to get on a bookshelf. Or to have the title not just shared by me, but shared by the chain. And I know there's a bit of, it's almost like you're selling out a bit by wanting that. At the same time, I would never know. I'll just never know. And if I push that button tomorrow, I could release it. And I'll just never know the value from somebody whose whole job is to be very blunt and say this is not good enough. Try again. It's been sitting on a bookshelf for almost 3 years, and I haven't released it. That's why I'm bringing up this self-publishing question right now, because you did it. You said screw it. You literally said screw it. I'm gonna release my own book. And I like, by the way, that you even don't care about chapters, or even like you just say, whenever there's a new topic, you bold the topic. There's no like, you're literally doing it your way. So it's renegade. But I don't have the risk in. To me, it's too risky to go down that road.
I'll ask you one question before we discuss that, because it's also something I was discussing with this other person 2 weeks ago. And I'll tie it back to what was going on in 19th century Germany and other places, of course, but because I know more about that period and the Romantics and these philosophers and what they were doing, even including Marx later on. For those who think I hate Marx, this is why I mention him. But anyway, so like, what's your downside? Like, what's the downside if you publish it tomorrow? Like, I know you wouldn't know whether or not you will get, or it's up to the standards. But what's the downside really? It's like
it's only competing with me. It's not competing with anyone else but me, and I don't know if I'm good enough for that.
According to whose standards?
I guess according to every other book that I've read, with the exception of a few that are self-published. Yours is one of them. There's others too. I mean, I have read self-published books. For the most part, online. Rarely is it in hard copy. But even then, I've picked up a few hard copy. Friends have sent me something that's. I look for the publisher on the back. I'm like, where? Oh, right. Of course.
I'll ask you another question. Are you interested in people reading it, or are you interested more in getting the recognition by the editor?
The first one.
This is good enough to go. The
first one, yeah.
Which is people reading it, right?
Yeah.
So if you've built an audience, let's say, over the past year or 2 years, and now you have people who want to listen to what you have to say, wouldn't this be enough?
I had thousands of people go on the tour that I give on and off for the last almost now 14 years. And I think that I think I could imagine thousands of copies, if I'm lucky, purchased online.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I think there is a number that would have been satisfied. But in my mind, I'd like to at least assume that I have something that is appealing to people that don't know me. And I would want them to access me the way a friend would access me, meaning they see there's a topic they're interested in and I'm available. It's a very, very long road, and I think it's impossible to get your name out in a way that a publisher can share you the world over. It's very hard. This is not just books. I mean, musicians have the same problem. The many musicians that make their own music, they have their music appears in Spotify or whatever, but they've gone alone and they're making some money, but it's not as easy as having a license or whatever, licensing or not licensing, sorry, a record deal or something where the industry helps you. No, I honestly, it's like I don't even know if there's a right or wrong here, but it's more like a hesitation. It's kind of like, and this is no way, this is not an insult towards you. It's not an insult towards you or what you're doing. I'm in the same camp. I feel like I'm selling myself short.
Yeah. But so this is, I can give you 2 or 3 examples. 3 examples. One from the music industry, one from the book, if you want, publishers, book. 2 kinds of examples there. One from Mark Manson and one from 19th century Germany. Switch to something more serious between brackets if
sure.
This is 50 Cent, and I left it out. I wanted to write a chapter about 50 Cent, but then I chose not to. But the Eminem and all these rappers, like for you to be recognized by someone, if this is your goal, you have to at least put your work out there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So 50 Cent, what 50 Cent did, well, he had already a record deal, but then he got shot, and then he lost the deal because they thought, well, this guy's getting himself into trouble. We're not going to be releasing his music, or we don't want anything that has to do with him. And he decided to just record his another album, and he was giving it out for free on the street. Eminem and Dr. Dre got hold of it, and they were like, this guy sounds interesting.
Right.
So
it's a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone to, yeah.
For example, so the title is called Put Your Work Out There, which is the one I just published. Like,
right.
It need not be this 80,000 words book, because this is a lot. Like, it can be just a short story, for example, like, because otherwise, if you don't put yourself out there and you don't receive feedback from the people directly, you wouldn't really be able to improve or to tweak.
So you see that. So this is really just like, maybe this would get you a book deal.
I'm not even thinking about this. But it's just like, in my case, my goal is different.
Right,
but
right.
I don't. but it could be that. Like Mark Manson, this is where Mark Manson comes in. Mark Manson, the first book he published was about how to date women. Mark Manson is the guy from the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, yeah?
Right, yeah.
And he's a bestseller now. And he published through a publisher and a publishing house. But the first book, it was self-published on Amazon.
Right.
And he was a blogger, and he was putting his work out there, so people were reading, and then bit by bit, you maybe get recognized by scouts and the publishing house scouts. So now you have, like, you've established some sort of credibility in what you do, whatever it is.
But he had a platform that he could lean on already.
He created it for himself.
That's true. He created it for himself, but if I remember, you tell me if I'm wrong here, he was already a household. His name was widely known before he sold that book on Amazon. It wasn't just like a guy with a book that he wanted to sell and it went viral. It's not like...
No, it was pretty much like that, because
really?
he was a well-known blogger, but he wasn't like, he was even, it caught him by surprise when he became a bestseller on the New York best-selling list or whatever.
Then he's one of those. He's an exception in that sense because he got lucky.
Course.
Yeah. Right.
But the idea is, like, otherwise, if you just keep on sending your draft to publishers, and then you get rejections.
Hey, the personal question, and you tell me I can remove it by then if it's too personal.
I don't.
Were you trying to get this published and nobody? No, you weren't. No. You didn't even try that. Okay.
I didn't even care about that.
You didn't care. Yeah.
No. It was so, and I'll get back to that to tell you where the idea of publishing a book came from, because it's not even a book; it's like a booklet. If you want.
Well, it's actually, if anything, I do need to mention this. I'm guessing these are your students that made you really upset. Abstractive Jade and Georgina Relativina. I mean, I'm guessing these are AUB kids that just pissed you off.
Nope.
No. Okay. All right.
No. My experience at university with students has always been good.
Okay, so these are just literally fictional characters. They
or people I met at philosophy conferences.
Right, I see. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
But not students. Like, I've always been on good terms with students.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I don't really take myself too seriously in class, except for the first week.
And you make it clear over and over. You're not taking yourself seriously even in this book. I mean, that's sort of like, that's the thesis of the whole book. It's like there's just one life.
Going back, I'll just clarify things. I'll now switch to the 19th century example, the German Romantics, and then I'll go back to what made me opt for self-publishing, if you want, or to just put my work out there. If you look at what philosophers were doing back in the day, they were, if you really think about it, they were at least people like Hegel and Schelling and Hölderlin and Schlegel brothers, etc. They got together and they just decided to start a magazine, to publish a magazine. So they would start a magazine and they would start publishing it, or they would just publish their books, and then of course they would also submit their essays or participate in essay competitions done by the government or whatever. But and even Marx started a publishing house or a magazine, it was, I think. So they didn't really mind that much just publishing or self-publishing between brackets. So that wasn't a problem up to a certain point, even though some of them, or eventually they would be published by, reputable publishers or editorials.
Sure, but we know about them because their works have been published. Otherwise, these would have just been sort of lost. I mean, we know. No, you don't think so?
In certain instances, they self-published as well, and the magazines were self-published, and they would get together and they're like, we need to start a magazine, and they would start a magazine, and it picks up.
Right. Yeah.
So that's So why not do that?
It's a fair question, and you've gone that road.
Yeah. Because, and I'll tell you what we were discussing. Sorry, now I'm interrupting you. This is where the premise or the issue I was discussing. Sometimes when you don't put your work out there, I think you're missing out on the opportunity, or you assume that this work is a finished product, that you're not going to evolve, or that you're not going to be revising it. Like Kant, and I use the example of Kant. I can give you other examples as well, like Schelling, for other philosophers. But Kant published he spent 7 years writing the Critique of Pure Reason, one of his seminal works, and no one understood it. He had to revise it, and he published the second edition right away, like right after it. He was like, no one is understanding anything. So, so he didn't think to himself, oh my God, no, you need to understand what I wrote because this is my finished work. No, he was humble enough to revise it. So, but he was able to do that because he was getting feedback from the people, or at least those who read it, and his friends who tried to understand what he was saying. So there's, I think, when you look at it this way as an ongoing work, like I wouldn't mind in a few years or maybe in a few months to add more to it, to this book, and then take out some bits that seem to be more repetitive, and it's repetitive on purpose and now, but I can change the title, just like you said, like Why So Serious might seem better. I can now change the title and upload it, and you would all receive, those who bought a copy, you would receive an email saying, well, it's updated. Here's a second version or edition.
I thought about this actually myself. It's like there's that is the advantage I can point at right away, that you have full control even post-publishing.
Yeah.
I mean, you assume that you're...
revised it 4 times, by the way.
Since releasing it.
Yes.
And
I've been uploading it. And I think you received one email once.
That's true.
Where I announced.
A week ago maybe, or a few days ago.
That was the last kind of revision.
Yeah, that is a built-in advantage, and you assume that everyone who bought it will want to update what you updated.
Some people were sending me mistakes, like they were like, "Look, there's a mistake here," and I was like, "Yeah, thank you, man."
Yeah,
it's well, it's like
you've cut out the middleman. That's for sure. I mean, the internet is your publisher, if anything, and it's your own effort. If you don't make an effort, nothing will get released.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I still think, and I could be wrong here. I still think that the net benefit is getting a published book. It could be like the whole charade of getting an academic piece published in a journal, which you kind of hint at from time to time, that it's so, like, it just kind of ends up in a library. Nobody reads it.
And no one reads it.
Right? And versus you have a blog and you publish your article on your blog. And I think somehow there is still an advantage of having an academic article that a serious student can cite rather than a blog. Now, I'm saying this without even, like, I look at blogs all the time. I actually I do data research on Twitter. So I actually, social media has become a library for me. But I still think that the vetting process, all the pain that goes into getting a piece published in a science journal or whatever, an academic journal, I think it vets out a lot of the fat. And there's so much fat right now, and maybe that's one way of doing it. It's an old-fashioned way. It has its flaws too. I mean, I've worked with an editor. I actually had to change my editor because this is not reasonable. So you have to go a different road sometimes, and you have to pick someone that's better suited. But I don't know. It's kind of like I would not be able to write a PhD without a thesis advisor. I think I would need a thesis advisor to push me in the right direction. I'm saying this as somebody who knows also that it's very difficult and very sometimes it's painful to have somebody telling you all the time it should be done differently. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the truth is, at the end of the day, now both options are credible. People make money. People make money off of Instagram. People sell their content on Instagram, and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they have no publisher. There's no publisher. It's them. Because the phone is their publisher. And this strange beast, this thing, is their publisher. But I think, till this day, I'd rather watch a documentary that was made by a team of journalists covering the U.S. election rather than an Instagram influencer telling me what to think.
This is why I don't think like you can have like proper debates on social media. Like this is why this is why you just, it's snippets. You put it out there. You fight a bit. You troll other people, and that's it.
Yeah.
But along the way, because this is something you mentioned when it comes to my classes, like the other day. So this guy is a Lebanese expat. He lives in the UK. I had coffee with him here. So he's visiting. He's been here for 2-3 weeks, and we just went and had coffee. So it's not lonely.
You met one of your fans.
No. I've been meeting a lot of people before Corona, and now, like before Corona, even more. I've been meeting a lot of people, and many who, or not many, like many are either expats or some of them whom I was able to meet here were non-Lebanese, were international. So the answer to your, this is what I wanted to point out, that when you mentioned the lonely aspect, I'm actually meeting people. I'm usually, and I mentioned that in the other podcast, I'm an introvert. But it's somehow Twitter gets you it puts you in a certain mindset whereby, or it puts you out there, so people already know. Like, I don't know, it's just, it facilitates things a bit, at least for someone like me. At the beginning, it was
they know you because they've been watching you.
So you don't have to just you feel like you've known each other for years now because everything is out there, and then it makes things easier.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, you know them much less, if at all, because you don't have access to their world. I mean, it's just somebody that's using. I mean, they can watch you on a podcast, or they can take your course. They probably know more about your life than you know.
During the course, or we DM, or we.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So people who I interact with on a regular basis. Just yesterday as well, I saw someone who's also is going to be taking a course, the upcoming course. So it's like it's interesting. Like this usually doesn't. So it's not as lonely kind of.
Right. Yeah.
In that sense. So does it become lonely eventually? I don't know. Now with Corona, maybe, but because you don't really, like, I'm not going out a lot, and I've only recently started going out for walks, etc. But before that, I was stuck at home. But anyway, so yeah, I don't see that as a disadvantage in my case. And as for going back to the intellectual pursuit, so when you put these snippets on social media, or not necessarily, but either way, like when you connect with people, you eventually end up having discussions, or you meet up afterwards for coffee or drinks, and you get to discuss things in more depth.
Yeah,
and this is where the intellectual pursuit takes place.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think there still has to be,
So like we wouldn't discuss things over WhatsApp or over Twitter. Like we almost never even interact on Twitter, right? But then we're here and we're having this.
I mean, from time to time,
discussion.
I like to poke fun. I mean, you call it Trickster, and this is it's something else I want to get into. I mean, yeah, it's playful. When I have guests on the podcast who are arguing with each other, I kind of like to get in the way. But it's happened a few times, and the arguments end, I think, because it's like they're embarrassed. They're like, I don't want to be seen here. And everyone goes home. I'm like, oh, that worked out just fine.
Yeah, and speaking of which, yesterday, I think someone commented, because someone mentioned my podcast, and they were like, yes, but would you make them shorter? And there are certain times during the podcast when things are awkward, and I'm like, and that's the point. Like, in my case,
yeah,
it has to be like this is because sometimes in our discussions, like you get to a weird point, or there's awkward things when we're discussing things that might be a bit tense, or a topic that might be a bit controversial or tricky, or it's like this is part of it. And but yeah,
that's the chief complaint I get, but it's among friends, and I know they're not even listening. They're like, yeah, you should make it 15 minutes long. I'm not doing it for you. Oh, I'm sure more people will watch. I don't know if that's true. And I think, you know what? Let's wrap it up with the idea of trickster, the notion of being a trickster, and let's wrap it up with the king of podcasting, Joe Rogan. He mentions several times that he deliberately wanted to have long-form conversations. And some of his episodes are 5 hours long. I mean, they're long. They keep going and going. Maybe not 5. Maybe not. I know
five.
One of them at least reached 5. I know that.
The one where he inaugurated the first the new
the new spot, like the first Spotify account.
Studio, it was 5 hours long with Duncan Trussell.
There you go. 5 hours long. So
and he has others. But this one was, I think, the longest.
Yeah. So it's somebody we're familiar with. We've never really talked about this, but it's obvious. It's clear that we both are up to date with the king of this medium. He's clearly the most unappealing prototype you would want for if you can imagine a focus group or something like that, sort of like trying to find a man that would be appealing to everyone. This is the last. He's offensive. Yeah. He goes hunting, talks about owning a gun. These are things, by the way, that I'm not comfortable with. I would not I don't have a gun. I don't go hunting. But he does, and he has his take on it. And you know what? He's very comfortable with explaining why. That's his view. Maybe he's mixed martial arts. I have no curiosity about jiu-jitsu or taekwondo or anything like that.
Yeah. He's
extremely invested in that whole industry. I mean, I think he still participates in it. And he does episodes just watching fights. What are they called? Fight Companion or something like that. So he
watching the ones where he sits with his friends and
they're watching
these are one of my favorite episodes, by the way, the ones when he does that.
And he gets high, he gets drunk. On occasion he'll get very important figures high and drunk with him. And can you imagine a more sort of like, we can't have this? And then he is the most watched, the most listened to podcaster. He gets more views, more listens than hit series. He gets presidential candidates on his platform, entertainers. He gets scientists. And I find myself sort of drawn into his way of talking. I don't think you call it highfalutin, I think. That's the word you use sometimes. Yeah. He's not in any way highfalutin, although he's now he made $100 million off of licensing deals. That's insane. But he's a common man with many trades, or at least that's the image he portrays. I don't think he's actually that common. I think he's quite special. But all that is to say, there's a playfulness to him that he literally doesn't take himself seriously, and he will post things online you think would end a career of that kind of person. This is what I'm doing. I'm at the shooting range. I'm cooking moose meat. I'm whatever. I'm doing all of these things, and it takes some guts, I think, to do this, and know that if the consequence happens, and if you lose your platform, so what? I'll move on and do something else. Are you in a way, are you following that path of, I don't want to be confined to the one thing that I studied, the classroom, the university setting, the academic world? Your favorite philosopher in the book is a man I've never heard of, Feyerabend.
Oh, yeah.
And he, you call him a real trickster. You call him a troublemaker.
He was.
And you also compare him I think in a way to, I hope I'm not overstepping here. Sounds like you.
Or I was very heavily influenced by
sorry, maybe that's exactly. You learned from him.
And I also, so the person I mentioned a few times here, with whom I have been discussing these, he studied with Feyerabend.
Oh, really?
At UC Berkeley. And so when he was at UC Berkeley, so I even have like firsthand experiences
that's crazy.
And stories of what he used to do in class.
But I
did not mention that in the book, but yes. So now I even like, this is really how he was.
But I like how you explain how you got into him, that you're trying to write your thesis and then you search for books that have nothing to do with your thesis. And then you stumble upon an autobiography of a very unknown philosopher. And I'm going to quote you for the last time. Feyerabend was a real trickster, a troublemaker, who, unlike Schopenhauer, did not have money, got into the system, but never took shit from anyone, nor took things for granted. His loud mouth got a lot of criticism, and he had many detractors, but he took it with sportsmanship. A real philosopher. He was ready to put his career on the line to question the very foundations of knowledge and the scientific method. So, here you have the bridge between a serious academic who's in Berkeley. He's not in his attic.
And ETH Zurich.
Absolutely, yes. And he gets a lot of money there and spends his money on his students, taking them out for dinner and his colleagues.
Yes.
So he's obviously celebrated in academic circles. He made it.
Not so much now.
Maybe,
not
right.
so much, but yes. But he was like, you couldn't...
I mean, he's faculty in two very important institutions. And he's also very carefree. So he's able to do both.
Yep.
Is that the model? Like, so Joe Rogan, he is a professional fighter. He did study, and he spent years doing it for not for fun. I mean, he made his trade off of mixed martial arts. He's a well-honed comedian. He spent years on stage until he got his first special. He's a very serious podcaster. He started this maybe a decade ago or longer. Or maybe around then. I don't know.
2007 or something.
2007. Right, so 13. But it's obvious the man takes it very seriously. I mean, he has very little help. One assistant. This guy who's always hidden off camera, Jamie. And you can tell the man is heavily invested in this, to the point that he's financially rewarded for it. So is that the model where you can prove yourself and then say F you, I'm going to go my own way?
See, this is the thing. Ideally, this is how it should be. And this is maybe what tenure is for in academia.
Tenure and trickster are in a way like that's the link.
more or less. But the thing is, nowadays, to even so much as get tenure, you will have, they filter them out. So if you're a renegade or if you're a troublemaker, then you wouldn't even dream of the promotion, even if you have decent publications or decent publications, career, degrees, etc. So if you're a top-notch academic and they don't want you there because of politics, they would kick you out. And I can give you examples of people I know off record, but it's
so the tolerance for a trickster today went down. Right.
And I don't only mean in the humanities or philosophy, etc. No, I even like computer science departments, because now they're doing politics, because now there are too many things at stake here, because things have changed nowadays. Like back in the day, during Feyerabend's times, things were, and I mentioned that in the book, maybe things were different now. Like if Feyerabend was living today, I don't think he would have been able to do that.
That's interesting. So it's really recently that this has sort of permeated academia, because he's recent history, and the man's
yeah. But he was teaching in the 60s in Berkeley and these places. Like he died in 94, if I'm not mistaken. He had brain tumor, but yeah, and he fought at war, and he was like, and the way he narrates it, like if you read his autobiography, it's just fascinating. And he's there with he's responsible for these group of soldiers, and they get or they get shot at, and he gets injured, etc. And he talks about it, and he talks about it, and he doesn't even mind. So yeah, he's nowadays, if you have someone who does that, like, and one more thing, which is in this case more important, he used to go to this conference in Switzerland with very renowned scientists and philosophers. I forgot where the conference was held, but the way the things they discussed and what he talks about, and this person is sleeping with that other person, and it's like you would think to yourself, like, what the fuck, you're at the conference, man, focus on it. But no, like he doesn't. So it's like you look at this guy who's supposedly a rigorous philosophy of science guy, and he's hanging out with people who are very renowned in physics and chemistry, etc. And he goes to these places and he's trolling them, and then they are trolling each other. So it seems to be a different kind of attitude that they all had. So they didn't need to put this professional kind of veneer when they were at conferences, or so. Like they could. This is like maybe they could distinguish, or they could focus on what was important when they needed to, and then other than that, they were just normal human beings. Nowadays,
that's the appeal. I think that's the appeal of Joe Rogan, or the appeal of anyone. People. What's his name? Elon Musk. This kind of person who's just, it seems like just a guy you'd want to. Yeah, maybe that's the appeal. So these are somebody who made it but are still well grounded, and they're jovial along the way. The definition of sardonic. When you say sardonically speaking, is it the undertone of humor, but there's a very serious sort of veneer with it? Just not.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this is also what I mentioned. It's like Socrates, unlike the sophists, for example, is interested in seeking truth. So underlying all this is a genuine quest for truth, or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
But then it's done in a playful way, such that you don't get too hung up on a certain idea or a certain viewpoint to prove now to yourself that you are right and to others. So there's always this space that they create where they keep examining themselves. So this is where the Platonic or the Socratic statement of the unexamined life is a life not worth living. Because if you take yourself too seriously, it can also mean you become dogmatic about your views, and you would miss out on other views, or you stop building bridges, you stop being interested in other things when you are really dogmatic and focusing on one issue. So yeah, sardonic in this case, it doesn't mean like not taking yourself too seriously, doesn't mean to not care.
Right.
It just means to just chill. Like we are all gonna die, and you like is it worth it? Not worth it as in searching for meaning, but is it worth it to obsess over one idea and then fight with other people trying to prove yourself right, blah, or the uptight professor, or the uptight boss, or the uptight businessman, those who just are focused on one thing and are doing, So now, why sardonically? Because I think you would know why sardonically.
Don't tell me sardine. Don't tell me sardine. Don't tell me sardine. Oh,
no. So I was having coffee with a friend of mine, and I mentioned that also. I mentioned her in the book, Safa, and she's like, I don't even know what we were discussing, but she's like, yeah, sardonically speaking. And I was like, wait a sec. Sardonically speaking. Interesting. Yes, I think it's the title for the book, because Lebanese sardines, for those who don't know, I love the combo. But so yeah, this is where how the title came up, or how we came up with she came up with the title, basically. But the original title was something else. I think it was called, or I was thinking about calling it a philosophy for trolls or something.
Well, I think it's the opposite, because it's the it's a book for somebody who wants to understand the whole dance that's happening on all sides of, I think, on all sides of the spectrum, and the student, the professor, the institution, a disenfranchised student, disenfranchised professor, an institution that's struggling, social media, its uses, its
cancel culture,
cancel culture, and also maybe the universal component, which is things that are way beyond the Lebanese story. I mean, you reference mostly American comedians and musicians, but the universal sort of language of comedy and art and hip-hop music in particular, those don't have borders. And I think my favorite part of the book is the most personal one, which is where you're a kid in 2000 on a school bus with your friend listening to Eminem lyrics and not understanding what the kid is saying, not understanding Eminem. And you save just enough money to get the cassette, Marshall Mathers LP, I think. And and then you find your way back home, your Walkman, and you listen to Eminem over and over and over.
And there's this bit where I did not include, whereby the first time I'm listening to the cassette, I just I click play, and then 30 minutes later, I think my father pops in. He's like, "What are you listening to?" And he listens to it, and then he's like, "There's a lot of fuck and shit in this record." I'm like, "Yes, but I like it." And so,
yes, but I like it. No, but the thing is, because that's a universal moment. It's not. I mean, every kid with a Walkman or whatever it is now. I mean, now it's just a different landscape. But there's a certain time where you had to save just enough money to buy a record that had a release date. And you have to go to the store and wait for it and get the bootleg copy, get the fake, the lyrics. I used to go to a place in Hamra, which is, I'm sure it's gone now. It's called Bang Up on Jeanne d'Arc. I have no idea if it's there anymore. It's the early 90s. I mean, it's probably gone. And I used to save enough allowance money to go buy a a copy of a cassette. So the guy would make like 2000 lira thing on his duplicate cassette so he could keep the original, right? And I would spend hours with a cassette player and just listen. And these lyrics have nothing to do with Lebanon, yet they relate. So I think that's that's the universal message that I appreciate always, which is, I mean, the story has to resonate with a wide audience. Otherwise, it's just a little too narrow and it can be dull. I think, Mahmoud, you're going grayer and grayer every time I speak to you. So next time you'll be, I think, just white.
There's reference to...
You have patches here, and they're sort of exposing... Yes,
my
yes.
hair?
Yeah.
My God.
You've aged the last 2 months, but I think all of us have. This year has been tough on all of us, but I think...
It's, yeah, it's been tough.
We'll look back on these episodes and we'll realize that, the first and second one, we both aged significantly.
Or maybe the lighting, I'd like to think that it's the lighting now. And you can see more, but no, it's, you're right. But these stressors are always good. I mean, look at you, you're thinking about the possibility of self-publishing, etc. But you're really... The podcast is just one example whereby you're putting things out there.
That's true.
And you're doing it your way. And you're... My other cat is here. And you don't wait for... There's no chain of command there or hierarchy. And
that's true.
You know?
You're absolutely right. There's no sponsorship. It's just me.
It's just you.
Yeah, that's true.
And you do whatever you want, and you include whatever you want, and you do it your way, the editing, etc. So that's just also like you're in control. And then I would believe you're learning a lot from the entire experience.
Hands down, I finally know what I'm doing. I think I finally know what I'm doing. At the beginning, I had no clue. But I will say.
But this is the thing. This is how you learn.
Yeah. Look, we'll quote Joe Rogan one last time. I think both of us keep saying his name, hoping that one day we end up there. This is subtle. The struggle matters. If you're not struggling, you're doing it wrong. And if you're not struggling after you've made it, you're doing it wrong. So the struggle, keep struggling, and put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And I think to different degrees, both of us are doing variations of this. Your sentiment in the book, which is you start by saying a few months ago you were really angry, and you're not as angry right now. And I think that is very important. You found a way to channel the anger. Yeah. That's fundamental. I do that for a living. That's my whole life. Channeling the, whatever you want to call it, channeling the passion into a pursuit. So that's really what matters. Yeah. It's that doing the things that you enjoy. After a long stretch of pain, I think it's well-earned time for a little bit of playfulness and a little bit of joy. Yeah. And good luck on your move to Canada. Thank you. I'll see you somewhere on planet Earth. Hopefully. Yes. Do you have any plans to come to Lebanon anytime soon? The winter, yeah. I plan to spend some time over the winter. Yeah. But if you're still there... That would be around... قبل راس السنة. Because I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. It's highly likely that I might still be around, yeah. Good. Because I'd rather see you there in December weather than Canada in December. Oh, yeah. Like the way things are going now, I think we will be here. Buy the book. Check out the discount, 40%. And Mahmoud, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening. And a friendly reminder to help support this podcast by contributing through Patreon or PayPal. All links are in the details box below. Until next time, I'm Ronnie Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan.